Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Break the Rules live stream. I'm your host, Lev Polyakov, and we are here tonight with Ian McMath, and riding shotgun with us over here, we have Vlad Davidzon for the very first time in the flesh in the BTR studio, and we're going to be talking about a lot of the unfortunate things that have been going on, both in the realm of geopolitics as well as in the realm of here in the United States, and what exactly the connections are between them and what it's going to mean from here on in. So we're going to be talking about Charlie Kirk, we're going to be talking about Iryna Zarutska, as well as the recent incursions into Poland on behalf of the Russian government with the Shahed drone strikes. And that does bring me to one particular quote that I wanted to say in relation to these drone strikes, which is from Machiavelli. "There is no avoiding war. It can only be postponed to the advantage of your enemy." So that is something that I think we're going to have to keep in mind while we're trying to deal with this very important issue that's taking place right now after the horrible assassination and so many people in the various social media spaces going nuts right now. A lot of people who I went to school with, who I just knew from life, they appear to be turning into Maoists overnight in relation to what's going on. So let's bring this over to Ian McMath. You are the media chair for the New York Young Republicans Club, and it is a great pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for coming in. And please let me know, first off, with Charlie Kirk, what's been the reaction right now from the people that you're close with within the circles? I imagine a lot of the people who you're in touch with have personally known him. And just let me know what the situation is there.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be on your show. I appreciate the invitation. Glad to be coming to you from New York City. On the topic of Charlie Kirk, this is truly a tragedy for the people of the United States of America and for our political system. We cannot allow the assassin's veto to influence our political process. And Charlie Kirk, his death is one that hits us in the gut so hard because in terms of just objective morality, a man who is engaged in honest, sincere debate being cut down on a college campus, and a man who is in many ways beyond criticism. There was no justifiable reason for him to have been killed other than somebody might say he has a different opinion. And we feel a visceral reaction of disgust and horror at his death, not only because he's a father and a husband and a family man, but because he embodied the American spirit of engaging in earnest, true debate. And he was a man who lived out his Christian principles in a way that many of us could only attempt to do. And so in this regard, it is truly a tragedy for our country.
Absolutely, I could not agree more. And as far as the death of Iryna Zarutska, which happened right before, also an indicator of where a lot of people's heads are at with this culture war that may become well, hopefully not. I'm not going to say it. I know that's on a lot of people's minds right now. But what I'm trying to figure out is, can the people who are in charge of the country right now, Trump's administration, be able to kill two birds with one stone, so to speak, be able to take care of the interior problems as well as focus on what I think for a lot of entities out there, like Russia with Vladimir Putin, does appear to be a really good opportunity while America is distracted to see how much more pieces of territory they could try to entrench themselves into. Not like full-out invasions, but just testing the waters, which is what I think was going on over here with these drone strikes into Poland, which, I'm sorry, but like for the people who are saying that, oh, this is like accidental, I know, Vlad, does it look accidental to you what was going on?
No. No.
Well, I think there's a lot of these are a lot of complicated issues. I mean, but one thing I wanted to reference, and I want to get to the question of Russia, but while we're talking about America's domestic politics, one thing that you just did is that you said you didn't want to use a certain word, civil war. You didn't want to say something that could be insightful. I think that's the word that you may have said, and I agree, but we're in a position that we can't control. The leftist media has been comparing MAGA and just normal middle of the road conservatives to being Nazis for decades. That
Correct.
While we sit here trying to police our language to not be too radical, because we aren't, we're honest brokers. We want to participate in the system. The leftist media and the leftist academics, and in many cases, those in the judiciary and the lawyers that participate in leftist lawfare, they have been attacking us and comparing us to the worst mass murderers in political history. And it comes to a point where how much longer can we tolerate being the target of such calls to violence while we police ourselves? And I think that if anything can come out of this horrible assassination with Charlie Kirk is a consensus on the right that we really must recognize that we are in a true situation of danger, and that to normalize political violence.
Oh, Ian got cut out right now. Bear with us over here while the connection returns back. But while we're doing this,
I don't have a clear path forward.
You didn't have a clear path with the connection right now. The connection,
we can hear you.
The sound is on, but the video is off right now. So maybe if there is any place where you can go where there's a better internet reception, we will do that. But Vlad,
stand by.
when
Am
it
I back?
comes to yes, you are back, but not video-wise. So video, you got to turn it off, maybe turn it on. But I want to hear from Vlad right now. Vlad, what are your thoughts on that, as well as the situation right now with these drone strikes?
Let's do one thing at a time. Let's start talking about Mr. Kirk. I will be honest.
Did that work? Am I back?
Yeah, we see you, but we don't.
Yeah, the video is not on right now, so there's something wrong with the video. But that's okay, because as long as we can hear you while you're trying to figure out the technical lens, as long as you hear us, as long as there's communication back and forth, that's the most important thing.
Okay, I can hear you.
So, Lev, to be honest, I wasn't that aware of Kirk's work. To me, he was just a guy with 5.2 million Twitter followers who was always saying things that I did not like about Russia, Ukraine. I was not terribly aware of the kinds of commitments that he had. I was not terribly aware of the sort of man that he was. I was not terribly aware of his work and his works. Ian, you're back.
It's good.
Say something.
Thank you.
Great. So I was not really deeply into his work. I didn't really have many opinions about him. I just thought he was a Main Street normie conservative of the kind that I didn't have much in common with. I don't really disagree with much of what he says. Temperamentally, aesthetically, psychologically, he seems like a totally lovely guy and a good American and a good normie American who does everything right. But I didn't have much of an opinion. Never met him. So watch a lot of his videos that have come up of him engaged in honest and even-keeled and sober and productive and respectful dialogue with people who are yelling at him and insulting him. Very impressive. So I've come to know who he is in the last 36 hours, and I'm impressed. That said, he was completely wrong on the things that I know about Eastern Europe, which is to say that he had no realm mastery. He had no regional expertise.
Yeah, so right now, Ian is not currently in this call right now. The call ended up dropping for Ian, but hopefully since Ian has the link, he's going to be back. So whatever it is that you're saying right now, Vlad, is not going to be heard by him.
He's entered the studio.
Here we go. He is back right now.
You're upside down, but I love it.
Yeah. So okay, we are back. Everything is good.
So Ian, I was just saying.
Upside down still?
Yes, sir.
No, now I hear you. Okay.
Am I upside down now?
No, you're right
good.
side up.
Okay. I just refreshed the browser, so thank you to the audience for your patience, and thank you too.
But it is an upside down world.
It is. That's right. So it's very
and like I don't have to care about Kirk's message or anything, or have to know too much about him. This is completely terrible. We are, as a country, entering Bolshevik territory. This is absolutely insane. There's absolutely nothing right about this. Nothing that he could have said. Anything that he could have said or believed in. Ian?
Oh, I just want to qualify what you said is that, and I was mentioning this before we jumped on, but what kind of society are we going to live in? We have to abide by some system of rules and ethics, or if we allow this political violence to be normalized, it's just going to be a world of warlords where whoever has the most guns and is the most ruthless is going to be the one in charge of society, and that's just unacceptable. We can't allow that.
Yeah, you have a spiral of violence until it stabilizes either with a communist or a fascist takeover. That's just the way it is historically.
And this is also why I'm very happy with somebody like Lomez, who was also calling for the kind of restraint when it comes to tit-for-tat style violence. What he's not calling for, and what I think is, or rather what he is calling for, and what I think is the right way to go about it, is to increase the amount of power that the administration has over things legally, justifiable when it comes to taking out all of these various enclaves of support for Antifa and all of these organizations that I'm thinking are pretty much like terrorist organizations by this point, as well as various organizations of foreign influence that are arranging all kinds of protests, things of that nature. Yeah.
Just to jump in real quick, we were discussing, right before my connection got a little wonky, that we don't know how are we going to react to this. We've been put in this situation. The MAGA movement, we've been, we're all about door knocking and persuading and making calls. And now we're in this we're facing an adversary that's thrown the rule book out, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to enter into a cycle of violence. But it's been very instructive. Look at the reaction that we've seen to the assassination. Rather than reflecting on what we're going to do, let's look at the opposition, the adversaries. The celebration that took place across the United States and some places abroad was shocking, and to realize that yes, there are these cells of people that are truly plotting to just overthrow normalcy. It's almost as if normalcy is their enemy.
But how could it actually be done when you have all of these activist lawyers that have positions that, they can't really be fired right now, legally speaking? They're going to be there for a long time. And if they're going to be letting some of the Antifa people out and letting some of the thugs out that have caused, the death of Iryna Zarutska and, people like her, that is going to be a really big problem. How can you do this without crossing the metaphorical Rubicon as far as suspending our system of laws? You see, it's a very difficult situation right now. How can this even be done?
Well, I'll give you some of my thoughts on this, which is that there's really three areas that we have to focus our energy on. That first and foremost, the source of all of this madness, the universities. Any universities that are receiving any kind of public support whatsoever, who have professors and who have programs who are openly advocating schools of thought, ideologies that are contrary to the civic order of the United States and the principles of constitutional Republican government, then we have to stop that funding right away. No more student aids, financial aid for those universities, no more grants. We have to play hardball. We can't take half measures. And I think that the source is the universities. Next would be the media, actors in the media. We could sit here for hours rolling clips of leftist media in the mainstream and also on the fringe who are calling for violence against the MAGA movement and just middle of the road people in the United States. They want socialism. They want to in the free market. They want to have a complete hegemony over the culture. And so that would be another area, media, which would be curbing those who have FCC licenses, taking a look at those licenses and checking their broadcasting. When it comes to big tech, punishing big tech in a legalistic way for allowing so people that are actually calling for violence to maintain their platform. And the third and final one is the judiciary and the legal system that's infected by these activists who actually could care less for the system. They're just using it as a convenient tool to advance their agenda. That one's very tough, and I think that in all of those areas, but especially that one, is one where you have to really build up a bench of judges. You have to build up an army of lawyers that believe in our American system to counteract that. But if the battle is in the courtroom, I would much prefer that than the battle being in the streets and in the homes of our country.
What do you think is standing in the way of that being done right now? It seems like people's tensions are already very high. Why wouldn't they go through with it? Or are there still way too many people in government that just want to, have an easy life and not really want to ruffle any feathers, and there's not really much that could be done there?
I think that the MAGA revolution, which is the only real force that has been successful in their opposition to the hegemony of liberalism and radical leftist ideology that has swept over the West in the past decades. We're just getting into power. The 2016 Trump victory and the implementation of the first Trump term was like the training wheels were still on. We didn't really realize the victory that we and how to govern. And honestly, many people still didn't, including myself, didn't understand the depth of the problem, of the crisis of the deep state and the infiltration of the in the legal system, the media, the academia. We knew about it. We didn't know it was so bad. So I think that this is just a generational fight. Everyone who cares about these issues, coming from my perspective, has to accept that they will spend their lifetime waging this fight. And I pray that it continues to be somewhat civil. And so there's no easy solution. There's a lot of boring drudgery ahead, quibbling in these institutions, winning small elections. But at least while we have the levers of power with Trump, I think that he should really take a serious look at cutting off funding for these radical universities, because truly that is the head of the snake, in my opinion.
While he's cutting off that funding, and I want to get to Vlad about this, is very important. While he's cutting off that funding, I think it's going to be very important for the funding not to be cut off from focusing on the dangerous parts of the world that want to take advantage of the fact that America is focusing only inwardly right now, as it should for a lot of these matters. But you see what I mean, Vlad? Like, I don't want that kind of situation to occur.
I want, and just before I think we're as someone that's more a MAGA Republican, I have my reservations about being involved in these conflicts around the world, and I'm glad to be here on this program with you to discuss this, because maybe I can be persuaded. I have a very much of an isolationist perspective on this issue, but I want to hear from you, because truly I would to be living next to a country like Russia, which has a proven history of being horrible to its neighbors and absorbing people and just maintaining either one form of dictatorship or another. I can understand that. So I want to hear more about why you think the MAGA movement should be more concerned with Ukraine.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. So we have not spoken about Iryna yet. Before we get to isolationism, internationalism, nationalism, I have this secondary echo of my words in my ear.
There's not much you can do about that, man. You just got to grin and bear it. Yeah, take these off while you're talking.
While I talk, I'm just going to talk, because I start to hear my own echo, and then I hear it, and then I forget what I'm saying, and it's difficult to keep up a phrase. So I'm just going to take my earpods off while I'm talking. So, Ian, obviously there's two killings that have rocked the country in the scope of, I think, 3 or 4 days, 2 days apart. You have the killing of 2 Americans. Well, one is not an American. One is a countrywoman of ours, a beautiful, lovely 23-year-old, innocent, lovely, beautiful, work-oriented refugee who would have made a great American, would have had a family here, would have made some man very happy, would have had children, would have created a business, was coming home from work at 11 o'clock, being stabbed to death by a literal demon, a force of evil in the world, vicious schizophrenia, demonology, a demon in the world, just took a knife and plunged it into her neck for no reason other than the fact that she was white, or she was good looking, or she was normal, or she represented everything that he was not, which was sweet and lovely and pure and normal and not insane. So there's obviously these two murders which are interconnected and have rocked the country, roiled the country in the scope of a week, right? How do you see the connection between these two murders? Because there's different ways to read it.
There's so many different ways to talk about these two tragedies together, but to me, I think that they're both indicative of the policies and the program of the left. First, for Charlie Kirk, it's now that judging from what we know from the assassin, the student came from a whole household with a mother and father. He had a 4.0 GPA. He had a very high ACT score. And so where did the radicalization come from? We think it must have been in the university. So that's, or maybe online. We don't know. But somewhere this guy was radicalized to commit such a terrible act. And then when it comes to the death of Iryna, which is tragic, and I hated to see it. And that was before all of us. This was the main topic before the Charlie Kirk assassination. It seems like the killer in that situation, the murderer, had been arrested 14 times, and it appears that this was part of the restorative justice theory about crime management in certain leftist schools of thought that had put him back out on the street and had enrolled him in some sort of social program to try to rehabilitate him outside of prison. And he, in my opinion, and I think any reasonable person would see, that he should not have been out in a situation where he was in the public. He should have been contained in jail where he could be looked after. There should never have been a situation where he could have been out and about to harm anybody. And so I think that those two murders are tied together because they're related to these leftist theories.
Okay, so we're on the
Does that make
same
sense?
page. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing that that American conservatives have not been more out in the open about how despicable and, frankly, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, unheimlich in German is extraordinarily. It's extraordinarily frightening. You could be sitting there just checking your phone or reading a book, and then some guy will just come and stab you in the neck, and there's just nothing you could do. She knew she was dying. She knew she was dead. She was bleeding out. I mean, it's symmetry of the fact that they both got it in the neck, right? They were both.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the most vulnerable part of our human physiology. That is the most vulnerable body part to get your neck cut or to get a shot in the carotid. There's almost nothing that can be done, and you really have to have a medic on the scene within 2 minutes or a minute and a half. And it's absolutely frightening to me as a New Yorker. I'm frightened of that in the same way that I'm terrified of some crazy person throwing me down into the into the train tracks. Right? It's like a deeply primordial subconscious fear that hits to the very bottom of our soul, because you can't do anything to defend yourself, and it's completely randomized violence, right? It just underlines how deeply fragile we are in the world, right? I think it hits I mean, political violence and schizophrenic violence are one and the same in terms
Well,
of
in
a
this
certain
case,
logic,
you could argue,
right? But it's really frightening. So, off of that, Iryna uh, has been garnering a lot of attention from amongst my Ukrainian friends. They're like, "Oh, American conservatives never cared about people like Iryna when they were being killed by Russian terrorists in Ukraine." But now she gets on a train track in the south, and suddenly everybody on the right cares. I'm sort of empathetic to that argument. I wish that American conservatives cared more about, and certainly people like on the MAGA right, such as yourself, cared more about Ukraine, because it's an incident like that 50 times a day. Some beautiful, lovely young woman who gets killed randomly by a Russian bomb or a Russian sniper, or has a Shahed blow up her apartment building. So for me, as a patriot of Ukraine, for someone who cares about Ukraine, for someone whose ancestors are from there, it's obvious what the connection is, and I don't quite understand why it's not more obvious to more people on the MAGA right that it's the same kind of randomized violence against civilians and against fragile people and against I'm going to be accused of misogyny and sexism by leftists, but okay, by against beautiful young fragile women who have their entire life and their entire family ahead of them. So, Ian, anything to say about that?
I think that is a very interesting way to put it. That the people on the MAGA conservative right are more concerned. Let me restart. What you said about Iryna's death,
Yes.
was very apt, because it's true. That really captured the imagination, or captured the attention, I should say, of MAGA conservatives, especially because she was murdered senselessly on that tram car by somebody who we would argue should have been in jail after having been arrested 14 times. Clearly, he's a threat.
He should have been
public.
Exercised, not just in jail. They should have exercised him.
Yeah, there's an argument. There's an argument for that. On the other hand, and I want to say unequivocally that the Ukraine war is just a horrible tragedy for the whole world, and that Russia and Ukraine are fighting is. I want to stop it as soon as possible. We need to find a solution. In fact, originally Lev asked me to join this podcast when I was at the Putin-Trump meeting in Alaska, and he wanted to give an update to your audience regarding that. And of course, now it's been 2 weeks, and it seems like there's no progress has been made. Trump
2 more weeks, as the saying goes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and now Trump is talking about putting very high levels of sanctions on Russia and those who are buying oil, up to 100%. I saw for China and India, who have been buying Russian oil.
But there is an issue, though. He recently freed, I think, or got Belarus to free 50 prisoners in exchange for relieving sanctions on Belarus. But I don't know, Vlad, from what I understand, relieving Belarus's problems is the same thing as relieving Russia's problems right now in terms of how tied to the hip those two are.
Yeah, that's actually... Sorry, I've got a little bit of code.
But before we go on, though, I just want to...
Yeah, Ian, answer that, and I'll get back to that.
Finish my answer. Why is MAGA not as concerned with people dying in Ukraine as much as they are from the senseless death of Iryna in Charlotte, North Carolina, being a Ukrainian refugee from the war? And I think that my answer is that we're focused, laser focused on America's problems, and to us, we've had such a bad track record of getting involved in foreign conflicts. We're very scarred from the Vietnam War and the Iraq War and these foreign misadventures that we went, to Afghanistan for 20 years to fight the Taliban, only to have the Taliban immediately take over, and we live in such a shameful state. I honestly feel like that America's foreign policy when it comes to trying to influence conflicts around the world, I would give it a very low grade. And so and meanwhile, the American standard of living is falling. We've had so much industry and jobs exported overseas. And as you see with this very case of Iryna, our cities, especially in Democrat-run cities, there's people running around who should be segregated through the justice system away from society. And so our situation is we want to clean up our house first, and we're very we've seen the past foreign interventions that we've been involved in, and we feel like those have not worked out. And I do feel for Ukraine, and I think that we want to stop the killing, and we want to do it in a way that doesn't expand the conflict beyond where it is already. I hope that's an acceptable answer.
Look,
I'm happy to debate you more.
I have tremendous empathy for what you're saying. I was against the Iraq War. I marched against it as an 18-year-old, which was already sadly 20 something years ago. Yesterday was the September 11th, the 24th anniversary of what started all that. 20 bad years of bad interventions.
Yeah.
Silly.
You still look just like you did before, though.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've gotten a little thick in the face and in the body and on the shoulders, but we're all getting older, right? Time stops for no man, even one such as myself. Look, you're absolutely right. Afghanistan was a catastrophe. The idea that America could export American values and the American way of life and European Enlightenment thinking to Pashtun tribesmen in the caves of Bora Bora. This was insanity. I mean, we went through the psychosis of nation building in the Middle East while not nation building at home. 100%, Ian. I agree with you. I agree with MAGA America First types who were against it. Obviously needed some police mission in order to kill Osama bin Laden and blow some stuff up after September 11th. Obviously, you don't allow that kind of thing to go unanswered. You do send some cruise missiles and some guys to kill somebody, right? Clearly. But a 20-year completely insane resource wasting $1.7 mission of building liberal utopia in the dunes of Mesopotamia and the mountains of the Hindu Kush, complete insanity, right? We agree on this 100%, right? No daylight. And I am a liberal interventionist in that sense, right? I'm an internationalist guy. I'm at the Atlantic Council. I'm at the I'm a Council on Foreign Relations guy. I'm all this, all that. Here's the thing: we have particular responsibilities towards Europe and Eastern Europe as Americans. American culture is an extension of European culture. You don't have to build democracy in Iraq. Very difficult thing to do. Exporting democracy to a place like Egypt, why would you want to do that? That's an insane thing to do, right? It's crazy. The Arab Spring was crazy. We don't disagree on any of this, I think, Ian. I see you nodding. But with Europe, we have particular responsibilities. This country was founded by Christians, it was founded by Judeo-Christians, it was founded by people running away from Europe who didn't want to serve in European armies, who didn't want to pray in the way that they did in the Church of England or Switzerland, by people who wanted a bit of land to build a house, people who wanted to mouth off. This is a country founded by Europeans on whatever European historical structures, right? We don't disagree on that, do we? So for Ukraine, which is squarely central in the middle of Europe, we have a particular responsibility that I don't think that we needed to occupy half of Afghanistan and half of the Middle East for 20 years, killing 30,000 Americans, using up blood and treasure, financializing our economy, screwing up our system, creating deindustrialization, shipping all our jobs abroad. I think we agree on what neoliberalism did to our country. I don't think we disagree. I just think that guys like you should understand that we have a particular responsibility to a place like Poland and Ukraine and Bulgaria that, in terms of American interests, we don't really so much do to Iraq. Go ahead.
That was very eloquent, and I, by and large, appreciate what you said, and except for our level of obligation that you insist on, I agree for the most part. One of the main qualms that I have with the insistence on American intervention, which we are engaged in. We are engaged in a proxy war with Russia. We are engaged in a very intense financial sanctions against the Russian economy.
Not intense enough for my taste.
They might ratchet up. I think the Trump administration announced that they are considering putting up to 100% tariffs on China and Russia. The issue that I have is that Russia is a massive country with a huge influence and frankly a historical relationship with the people of Ukraine. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did not Russia begin in Kiev
yes,
is that
that's
a myth?
exactly right. All three Slavic states, Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia, they all chart their historical lineage to Kievan Rus. This is what this is all about.
So why? So with that being understood, and before with that understood, and then also understood that the Russia's difficult relationship with Europe, Central Europe, Western Europe, Eastern Europe. I think that the context is that this is much more of a European concern than an American concern, but one in which we want to support you with. But how can we be investing this huge amount of effort into the European defense while at the same time they have totally opened the floodgates to Islamic immigration from culturally incompatible nations all over the world? It's almost as if that they've identified the wrong adversary. The ancestors of Europeans were very aware of the threat of Islam because it is a political and a political system as much as it is a religion, and it seems like will destabilize European nations. So my question is, how can we put all of this effort in defending against Russia, which I totally understand, while at the same time the European nations are inundating themselves with another problem that's going to arise?
Wait, could I answer? Well, I have my own microphone. So when it comes to the European issue, this is exactly the reason why America unfortunately does not really have any choice. Because I really don't expect the Europeans to be as brave as they may have been in other times, before they were babysat by the United States military, more or less, post-World War II. Because I think one of the reasons why they were able to have this whole refugees welcome mindset for a long time is because they ran out of a lot of problems. They didn't need to worry about maintaining military bases and all of that stuff. So the problem is that if Europe is going to be too scared of doing anything about Russia, if a lot of their politicians are going to be cucking out, then unfortunately America stands once again as the only power that actually ends up making a difference for the better. Because again, I want to say this Machiavelli quote again: there is no avoiding war, it can only be postponed to the advantage of your enemy. And these are the kind of calculations that we have to make right now.
True.
If America
and
postpones helping out.
Politics is war by civil means. And we are always in conflict. The world conflict defines life. And so just to illustrate your point, I mentioned that.
No, absolutely. But Vlad, would you say you agree with my assessment here as far as Europe not really being as strong as we wish it was, and that's why we always look at America now?
Yeah, partly it's their own fault. They didn't invest. I'm going to take this off because it echoes in my ear. They didn't invest in defense for a long time. They didn't take their own security considerations very seriously. They were free riders on American defense spending. But that's something that you agree with George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, neocons, paleocons. It's one thing that every American can get behind. The one country in Europe now that's actually spending 5% on defense is Poland. Obviously, and we're going to get back to Poland in a second.
Very proud to see what Poland is doing.
The Europeans.
Just let me jump in, Lev.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you mentioned Poland. We're thinking about these trade-offs. Yes, we have a cultural history that you mentioned in many regards. Poland is I think, rapidly becoming the model country in Europe. A lot, and we also think of Hungary a lot as well. And Poland is but Poland even more so. And I know that I want to hear what you have to say about Hungary. I've visited Hungary several times. I've been to their CPAC there, but Poland, to me, seems especially committed to having a fair democracy that is culturally aware of itself. And if this is my offer, Europe takes the effort to recognize its own cultural history and preserve that, and not to allow the whole world to flood into there, because if they don't recognize their own cultural right to exist and embrace this liberalism, then what's the point of defending them anyway? They're not even going to protect themselves. Next, they need to really take their common defense more seriously, which I think they're coming around to it.
They're getting around to it.
Yes, and Poland is, in many ways, it seems like Poland is becoming the model country, and may soon surpass its neighbors in being the most relevant country in Europe. I don't know if that's happening anytime soon. That's just how I see it. And so I think that if you want to have the sympathy and the assistance of MAGA Republicans, then Europe would do well to follow the example of Poland.
I agree. Look, I agree. There's a lot to say about it. In terms of looking at Hungary as opposed to Poland as a lodestar for American conservatives and nationalists and MAGA people like such as yourself, I'm really glad that you're saying Poland, because I've been banging on a drum for like 5, 7, 8 years now. Why are all these guys going to Hungary when they should be going to Ukraine and Poland, right? You know, obviously the Poles have 400 years of being occupied by the Russians. That's concentrated their mind. And so no matter how much they may not like certain things going on in Brussels or something at the pan-European Union level, they're still always going to be on side with the European Union against Russia, because they're Poland, right? Because Russia is their biggest existential enemy, right? It's the biggest apex predator. I just came back from Poland. Also, I went to see all the senators and all the heads of think tanks and all the spooks. I mean, they're very serious about building a deterrence. And the most interesting argument that I watched taking place between Polish elites was the three sides of whether they should build a NATO army, a pan-European army, or a Polish army so big that they could go porcupine and never get invaded by the Russians. Right? That's where they are. There's no one who's against Europe or against Ukraine or against the Western alliance in Poland, outside of some very crazy Confederacja circles, or even those guys are just, they don't like Ukrainian farmers because they're taking away their farm subsidies, right? But there's no pro-Russian fifth column in Poland in the way that there is in Slovakia and Hungary, right? So yeah. I think a guy like you taking a cue from Poland's much better and much more healthy than you looking at Hungary, which I think is a problem, and which I think plays this evil double game and still wants to continue trade as usual, energy policy as usual with the Russians, despite the fact that the Russians are waging war against NATO, against the West, against America, and against the European Union, which is at the same time subsidizing Budapest, right?
And that's also the question of influence, because if we're talking about how many agents there must be right now in the United States on behalf of the Russian government who try to convince good-hearted, good-spirited MAGA people that Russia's going to win this eventually. It's too big of a country. Look how much land it has, and bring up all of this propaganda about how Ukraine's government is persecuting the Christians and all this nonsense. When these things are being done right now, I want to imagine the mindset of the most ardent isolationist who would imagine, you know what, let Europe rot if they don't want to take care of their own problems, not our problem at all. I would imagine the kind of influence that I'm seeing from these propagandists. Imagine that times 100 when you have a Russia-China alliance in Europe, which ends up being taken over by those guys. Hold on, let me finish.
But I just go ahead.
Okay, it ends up being taken over by those guys, and how then you end up having way more of a penetration, intellectually speaking, into the heads of future isolationist American politicians, where yes, America may be isolated, it may be locked up from any kind of conflict that may be going on in Europe, but politicians are human beings, much like I've seen human beings being influenced by Russian propaganda here in the United States. Those human beings will be influenced by money, by power, by all kinds of things from a way more powerful BRICS, Russia-China alliance that has now taken half of Europe, if not more, in the future, where the United States decides that it's not its problem and it's just going to turtle up. So that's my plea to the MAGA people as far as isolationism goes.
Yeah, I just want to back that up. There's a guy on here called Grappler Balachi. What's this gentleman's name? He says Lev is always demanding European, American blood and treasure for Europe, and it's exhausting. I just want to answer this. One, no one actually wants American soldiers on the ground. I don't even want American planes overhead, right?
Yeah.
I'm not even asking for, although there are people in Ukraine who would want security guarantees with American boots on the ground, which obviously Trump does not. Trump is more of a World War I lessons learned than a World War II lessons learned kind of guy, right? We are not looking for American soldiers to fight. I think Ukrainians can do the fighting themselves. I think there's enough guys who are willing to fight. Everyone just wants more Patriot missiles and more sanctions and more defense and more, confederation of the European-American alliance against Russia. No one is asking for American boots on the ground. Certainly I'm not. And I'm not even one of these people who thinks that American planes should be shooting down missiles over Poland and Ukraine. The Polish Air Force can do that, right? They scrambled Dutch and Slovakian and Polish and Estonian fighter planes yesterday and the day before that in order to intercept these Russian Gerar Shaheds, which were penetrating and probing European Union and European airspace, right? So nobody actually wants that. I just want to say that to this gentleman who said that, right? That's very serious concern, and it's not something that we want. Next thing is this. I want to make an argument that this is actually good for America on any kind of added value or any kind of cost benefit, system that you're looking at. This is good that we're knocking out Russian army for 10 years on cents on the dollar. This is allowing us to test American weapons. It's showing that American weapons are the best in the world, and we're getting buyers for American weapons as the Egyptian generals and the Saudi generals and the Israelis and our African allies look at how good our weapon systems are vis-a-vis the Chinese and the Russian weapon systems and the Iranian weapon systems. It's still obvious that we're 3 generations beyond and above anybody else. And if you want the best weapon systems in the entire world, you still got to buy from America, right? It is beneficial for us in terms of controlling trade. It is beneficial for Americans to continue selling our weapon systems. It is beneficial on all sorts of ways. So I don't like that kind of argumentation. I prefer to talk in terms of values, right? In terms of things that we all believe in. But ultimately, I think it saves us that money and increases production and increases trade, especially when we're talking about reindustrializing the country, right? What are we going to be making? Basketballs as opposed to F-35s, right? When we're talking about reindustrializing the country, we should be building ships and high-tech, high-added-value planes, not, radios, right? Or boom boxes. So, Ian, I hope that's a kind of convincing argument.
Well, when it comes to manufacturing and a wartime economy, I would much rather people. I understand where you're coming from, and I don't want to knock it. And I think that I would, if there's going to be weapons being bought in the world somewhere, yes, I would like our allies, or those who we fight a common adversary with, to be buying our stuff. But in general, economically speaking, I would rather our workers be building things that don't blow up and get destroyed as soon as they're used. And
that's the Thomas Sowell broken windows. I remember reading about
It's-
that, right? Like, and
yes,
yeah, because
that a
he wrote
wartime
about how
economy is.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I completely agree that it's better to not have things that end up breaking the windows, have things that actually build something up for people to use. That's obviously a
true.
lot better long term. I completely
Yeah,
agree
but
with you there.
that point being made, the fundamental issue is, where is America's interest in this? And we're heading back towards a multipolar world in many ways, and that is the natural state of the world. The period from 1989, 1992, however you want to gauge the collapse of the Soviet Union, until essentially present day, the world, it was almost as if the natural law of global geopolitics was on vacation, and we had this moment of the Pax Americana and the global hegemony. We're still very much the most powerful country, but the truth is that we are heading back to the natural state of the world, and that includes the sphere of China, that includes the sphere of Russia, that includes Europe, and I want Europe to have its sphere. Did I lose you? Hello? Testing 1 2.
Yeah, sorry about that. I adjusted the audio and everything's
hear you.
fine now. Yeah, now Vlad can hear you. So you were talking about the multipolar
Turn
world.
off the mic so we can.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
just
no,
to,
no,
I'll
yeah.
restate my point as concisely as possible. That the moment of the Pax Americana, that is the post, from the collapse of the Soviet Union until recently, it's a geopolitical anomaly, and we have to face the world as it is, not how we wish it to be, which is a multipolar world. But we want to make sure it's safe for small countries. I don't want China to just totally steamroll everyone in its neighborhood, and I don't think it will. I think that we can create a coalition of those countries: Korea, Japan, Thailand, the Philippines, Vietnam. They don't want to be totally run over by China like they have it in sometimes historically. And the same goes for Russia. I understand that Eastern European countries don't want to be steamrolled for the millionth time by Russia, and so that's going to take a Europe and the United States working together. But I think that, going back to the JD Vance speech in Munich, at the Munich Security Conference, that's my position. Europe needs to value their own culture, and I forgot to mention this earlier when I made my list. I had forgotten to mention free speech and then political pluralism in a way that is democratic. We have this case in Germany with the AfD, where they're just constantly being undermined, and in England, where you can get thrown in jail for silly memes, all while importing Islam, which is fundamentally incompatible in the long term. We know how this is going to play out if Europe doesn't change quickly, and so I'm willing. MAGA wants to see a Europe that is able to return to its greatness. Make Europe great again. Okay, and if they can live up to that end of the bargain, like Poland is, if we can spread the Poland model to the rest of Europe, then I think that the MAGA Republicans would be much more interested in investing in this defense. And of course, we were talking earlier about warlordism, and what are we going to do? Would we rather have our system here, or the system of just whoever's got the biggest guns and the most force is going to be in charge? And that's what the Russian system is in many ways. And so we don't want to see that spread across Europe. But Europe has to recognize the dire situation that they're in, and if they want to have the MAGA Republicans come in and want to be on their side, they have to start acting more in line with our views. And just to wrap up this point, I want to land the plane. I totally understand why Europe is the way it is, because America exported ridiculous liberalism in the post-war era, in the post-World War II era, and they adopted it and fused it with their own liberal enthusiasm, and implemented a lot of the ridiculous nonsense that we exported from our universities. So
I would say
it's time
progressivism, but otherwise,
to
I'm with
change.
you.
Yeah, and so it's time that we recognize the perilous state that we're in, and that if we want to be partners, uh, and I don't know how this helps Ukraine's situation right now, but I'm saying But if Europe wants to be partners, they have to take seriously what JD Vance said at the Munich Security Conference.
I agree with you. Actually, I don't disagree with you, Ian. I split the difference.
You don't need these anymore.
Yeah, thank you. I split the difference with you, Ian. I agreed with most of what JD Vance was saying, even though he shocked Europeans. I also don't like the lack of free speech, and I don't like the identitarian stuff that is in Europe. I would argue with you just about the history of ideas, because there's local intellectual history that isn't just them re-assimilating French theory from the Yale English University with Paul de Man that they exported to us, and we exported back in a transmogrified, insane zombie way.
Yeah, you know more than myself.
The intellectual history on that's just a bit more complicated, but ultimately you and I come to the same end. I don't disagree with you on that. There are real reasons that France has and Italy had 25% of the populations voting for communists all throughout the Cold War until 1980 or 1984, right? And those are French and Italian reasons having to do with French and Italian culture and politics and religion, and those are radically different countries from us. And we're living in a post-Protestant country. We're living in a country that's a lot more like the UK for all sorts of obvious reasons than we are living in Greece or Spain, which, again, historically, because of a lot of intellectual history, has more to do with each other than they do with, let's say, Holland, which I just came from, and which I kind of dislike. But it's a different issue. It is the fact that Europe has a lot of work to do on the Islamist question. It's been 10 years since Orban won those arguments in the European Union. It's been 10 years since Merkel let in 1 million Sunni Arab Syrians into Germany, thus causing inadvertently Brexit and causing 10 years of very bad European politics inside of Germany. She should have never allowed that many refugees, immigrants, and economic refugees in through the Turkish border. It's destabilized European politics for 10 years, and ultimately, you see Farage waiting to come into power in 3.5 years in the UK. You see a right-wing government in Italy. You see Le Pen or a right-wing party coming into power in 2 years in France. In Germany, the AfD is polling as the biggest party in Germany. In Romania, you had a Ukraine Eurosceptic party in Romania that was not allowed to win. So basically, the right is ascendant all over Europe. I think we're at the point where no one's actually saying we need more immigrants from the third world, right, or the second world, or whatever you want to call it, right? That argument's kind of been won by Orban and Berlusconi and everybody else who made the counter argument 10, 12 years ago that this isn't great. Right? It's now an assimilation integration problem of the people who are already in Europe. Nobody, I think, really wants more such immigration in Europe, and center-right and right-wing parties all over Europe are basically consolidated in opposition to that kind of mass immigration, right? So we don't disagree on that. The free speech issue is real, and yet should we be, even though I don't like any of this stuff, and I wish they were more into Judeo-Christian Western heritage than they are, should we still be letting the Russians destroy the entire European political project just because the Eurocrats are weenies? It's a real question, Ian.
Well, you have to, exactly, and they are weenies. It's a world, like I said, we have to see what the options are in reality, not how we wish it to be. And of course, we don't want to have Russian warlordism to reign. I don't oppose that, and that's why Trump has maintained the relationship with Ukraine with a little bit more of a stern hand regarding handling Zelensky. But we still have the high level of sanctions applied to Russia. We're going to put those on India and China. That's what Trump is threatening. And I agree that we don't. I just personally see Russia as less of a threat to the future of Europe than mass Islamic immigration and the very alarming birth rates that we find in European countries. So
Look, the birth rates that happens when people secularize and get rich everywhere, from Singapore to Taiwan. The only country that still has kids is Israel for whatever reason. There are this is a problem from Canada to Western Europe. Ukraine has some of the lowest birth rates in Russia, also in Europe. These are not countries that are growing their heritage populations, right? These are not countries that are growing any population. Actually, as soon as people come, they stop having kids. This is something that nobody has an answer for. It's not just Western Europe. So I mean, it's just saying that Russian warlordism is not as big an issue as that is. It's a bit unfair because no one's having babies. Everyone should be having babies, but no one is, right? So I just think that's a bit unfair.
Okay, it's true. That's a good point. I know Russia has a birth rate issue as well, but the immigrants terrible. The immigrants are having huge.
Well, they're not immigrants. They're the Buryat and Muslim populations in the Russia has a 20% Muslim population. I don't know if you know this.
Yes,
Russia's a massive imperialist in Dagestan and Chechnya and lots of these little republics. Those are the people are having kids. Russians are not having any more children than Belgians are, to be, and probably a little bit less, actually, if you look at the statistics. So it doesn't mean we should allow them to kill all the Ukrainians and allow them to breach the Polish border with shaheds. I don't think that's the case, man.
So this is the problem right now for America, where right now it may be a situation where maybe people within MAGA think that, well, we can apply just like a little bit more sanctions, but maybe not go beyond because we fear whatever it is that we fear. But then if we're talking about a situation where the more time is given to Russia, if, God forbid, eventually they end up taking Ukraine and then like taking parts of Poland and so on and so forth, if America decides to step forth, then it's going to be way more expensive for America. 100%. And that's 100%. And then if we go even further down, imagining the scenario where half of Europe ends up being taken over by this axis of Russia and China, that's not going to be a great situation for the reasons I said before, where politicians in the United States, even if they're all American MAGA politicians, they're still human beings and they're capable of being corrupted. And if you have a super state which has so much territory, so many resources, and so much money now, they are going to be able to wield and bully all of those American politicians so that the kind of life that we appreciate here in the United States is going to get incredibly screwed up in the future. And I know that people say, well, it's already screwed up. All right, but do you want to take the chance of what I'm talking about here coming?
Life in the United States is nowhere near as bad as any as it could be, or as any country that is undergoing severe, true, bona fide civil strife. People still have jobs. There's going to work. You can get food on the table. Americans, for all the piss and moan, are doing great. And I'm terrified for them to find out what true misery is, like people in Ukraine or in other countries that are truly being torn apart. Lebanon, or God forbids these conflicts, other parts of the world. But the point is, I think we have to, and forgive me, I only have about 10 minutes left, but maybe 15. But I want to find in our conversation what you think about how this might come to a conclusion. Is Crimea, is that something that the Ukrainians have decided that they're not going to get back, or do you think that Crimea is that non-negotiable for you? Where is in this conflict right now between Ukraine and Russia, where is the line that you think that you guys could come to some sort of settlement? Or is it that your opinion that everything, all these talks about coming to some sort of end to the war is just buying time so that the Russians will just inevitably, when they see another opportunity a few years down the road, to try to take more and more and more, and they want essentially to reabsorb Ukraine totally. Is that your position? Or do you think that if we could come to a settlement, what would terms would be acceptable to you in terms of perhaps giving up some territory, and or if that's totally not up for consideration, and the objective is to take back everything that's been occupied?
These are great questions. So let me just give like a 1-2 minute answer as quickly as possible. I don't speak for the presidential administration, but I'll try to channel what they think and what the population thinks. The presidential administration, Zelensky government, actually is more open to a deal than the population is in some ways, and there's a floor under which they're not willing to go because they'll be lynched. The two sides are very far apart because both Vladimir and Vladimir, my namesake Vlads, are both see this war as existential and see regime collapse and personal death and the loss of all their wealth. In the case of Vladimir Zelensky, earned with the sweat of his brow as a young comedian and producer and filmmaker. In the case of Vladimir Putin, stolen from the Russian people and other people also. Both of them know very well that they will die if they lose this war. So it's very difficult to make a man and his administration, whose entire political legitimacy is based on not losing, to make tremendous concessions, right? So I'm just telling you this as an outside analyst who understands it. It's very difficult because they're very far apart, because they have completely insurmountable goals. The Kremlin wants there not to be an independent Ukrainian state. Now, maybe they're willing to allow a sliver of Western Ukraine, 4 regions out of 24, to be a rump state next to Poland after they take most of the country. Maybe, although not even that. If they can get the entire country, they would.
Well, I think that if they can get away with it, they'll take as much as they can.
Of course. So, the Ukrainians don't want to lose, and they don't want to be folded back into the Russian imperial project. And having lost hundreds of thousands of people, and having seen what happens to any territory occupied by the Russian soldiers, i.e., the entire male population there killed, all the policemen and anyone who ever served in the Ukrainian armed forces shot in ditches, the women violated, the children kidnapped, taken back to Russia, which is exactly what we see happen in any place that the Russians take. The Ukrainian population is not willing to do that. So are they willing to give up territory in exchange for real, muscular, written in treaty, inscribed in stone security guarantees? Yes, they are. Something like 75% of a population is willing to discuss actual concessions, however painful that will be, even though it'll leave millions of our countrymen and countrywomen under occupation. Very painful. Lots of people are willing to take an unpleasant deal if it actually means serious security considerations. But the Russians are not willing to have any boots on the ground, anybody, you can call it a French, German, Greek mission, not a NATO mission, but those are still NATO non-badged. Yes, go ahead.
You remember that peace deal, so-called peace deal that was done in Turkey?
Yes.
And in that peace deal, it was written that Ukraine's army would be reduced to like how much? It's like
30,000 troops.
Yeah, just like barely anything.
So, they're not willing to take a peace deal where Russia imposes dominion onto Ukraine, complete neutrality, cuts it off from European and European economic deals and trade deals, and doesn't allow it to have an army, and then takes half the country. Right? That's a very hard pill to get people to swallow, even when they're taking 100,000 casualties. So Crimea, my sense is that no one's going to say this openly, but I'm not a member of the administration. The Ukrainians would be willing to have a 25, 30, 50-year moratorium on discussing the status of Crimea. They're not going to allow the annexation of it, but they're under certain security guarantees have a moratorium on talking about it.
I mean, do you see this? Could the outcome be better than what we have in a North-South Korea situation, where we just have a militarized zone between the
Korean
and the war is not
situation,
never
that's a
officially
good
ended.
answer. Look, the Korean situation is often invoked by lots of my colleagues in the Russia-Ukraine analyst game. There are lots of people who think a Korean-style situation is the best outcome possible for Ukrainians. I still think that the Russian army could collapse. The war keeps changing. The Ukrainian innovation in military technology. I just came back from reporting on a new school for ground robot operators in Kiev region, right? It's amazing how quickly the technological revolution is happening. The fact that they just allowed young men aged 18 to 22 to leave the country temporarily means that the Ukrainian conscriptions from the age of 25. On my bus ride out of Kiev, half the bus was 18-year-old and 19, 22-year-old kids who wanted to go see Europe for the first time because they'd been at war for 4 years and they couldn't go anywhere. Right? The Ukrainian army lifted the fact that they couldn't leave the country for the first time since 22. So which means they don't actually think that they'll need these 22-year-old kids in 2.5 years. Maybe the war will be over. Maybe robots will be doing all the fighting, right?
And not only that, but I think that until a certain age, you don't even have to go into the military. Like
Until 25.
Yeah, until 25. So we know like young men who are in their early 20s, like 20 years old,
21.
and they're able to travel the world. They're able to do things right now because unlike Russia, Ukraine actually does care about
People.
their future generations being able to fare well in life and not grow up completely in this war type of scenario, so they can see that there is a better life out there. So my hope also to what you were talking about with the multipolar world is that the kind of poles that we do have would be, let's say, a stronger Europe, the kind of Europe that we want to see, and it wouldn't be Russia, which is like the country version of DeCarlos Brown Jr., the guy who was stabbing Iryna Zarutska.
I understand, and it's a
go
shame. And one of the great shames of the past century is that Russia became. There was so much hope for what Russia could become. I mean, obviously, the Bolshevik Revolution failed, and then communism collapsed, and there was a period of optimism. But I as someone who is perhaps not as studied as the both of you, but still would consider myself familiar with Russian history, it's a shame that it's become a sort of mafia state that it is. And it
Yes,
is,
of
and
course,
like you described,
it's
it's like that.
overdetermined, but it's a shame.
It's like what is it? What's that thug that stabbed the girl? I mean,
Yeah.
I think that is an apt comparison.
To be clear, by the way, when you're talking about a mafia state, the leaders of that mafia are the same KGB people that unfortunately Gorbachev did not get rid of. Correct. He ended up getting rid of the Communist Party, but he did not get rid of the KGB, where back in the day, say what you want about Russia during the USSR post-Stalin, but at least they did have a sort of checks and balances system going on, as weird as it is to say, where the Communist Party checked the KGB and vice versa. Now we just have the KGB, or the FSB people, as they're called now, in charge, with Putin at the top, and that does create a really, really bad, incestuous kind of snake eating its own tail environment when it comes to what motivates people like this. Like Putin was talking about how his great inspiration was Alexander Nevsky, who was working for the Mongols back in the day, burning down villages who didn't pay the Mongols tribute money. So and this is a final question I want to ask you. I know you got to go right now, Ian, but real quick, your experience with China, with these more Eastern matters. I'm curious what your take is on the China-Russia dynamic, because from my perspective, I think it's a fool's errand to try to dislodge a Russia run by these KGB people that inherently hates the West and hates what it stands for, and shows respect to a country that I think it sees as being much more sadistic. Because I think it does remember, you could say culturally, like ethnically remember the past of these Mongols abusing these Russians. So I think that they do have this sort of reverence towards the east and towards China. They see how they were able to lock people up during COVID in their apartment buildings, not allowing them to leave. And to them, that's power. All this Christian American kindness and virtue, to them, that's weakness, at least from my perspective. But you being more of a expert on China, what exactly are you seeing with the Russia-China dynamic? And then we'll conclude the show.
Just for the reference of your audience, I did live in China from 2015 to 2019, so about 4 years, and my major in college was in contemporary Chinese politics.
Cool.
So the situation with China and Russia is one that I think that they're driven together by their shared grievance against the West. They don't really have a terrible lot in common in terms of their extreme border with one another. It's the longest border between two countries in the world. The Russians and the Chinese historically have had a lot of disagreements. I don't think that they're natural allies. They're allies of convenience, but at the same time, in the way that the world is set up right now, they are. Their alliance that they have is going to be one that they're going to stick with. The United States is one that they've both shown through their actions and through their policies. It's a country that they're aligned against the U.S. They don't like the hegemony of the U.S. because the hegemony of the U.S. means that they can't just get away with whatever they want at any time, anywhere in the world, which is more and more what they're trying to do. They would just love for the U.S. totally withdraw. And this is the great conflict that we have a discussion in the MAGA world is that, all right, so if the U.S. totally withdraws from the international stage, then you have these two marauding powers, China and Russia, that it's almost like, people say, oh, we're dealing so unfairly with the other countries, criticizing our tariffs or whatever. And I was like, first of all, tariffs are a perfectly sensible way to protect your economy. Every country uses it. But it's also, would you rather do business with the United States where there's going to be some trade-offs, or you do business with Russia and China where unfairness is guaranteed? And leading back into your question, China and Russia, their history is very fraught, and I don't think that they're natural allies. And but the situation they're in is interesting because they kind of need each other to be to kind of dislodge American hegemony, which is becoming more and more eroded. So I don't think that it can last over the long term because the dictators, they inherently don't trust each other. That whatever they might envy about the Chinese economy and how they've shown successfully that they can rapidly industrialize. They're a technocratic state. It's like techno-fascism, perhaps you could say, with the way that their economy is set up and the absolute power of the party, which on the outside could look monolithic, but on the inside has tons of little factions fighting with each other, and it presents a united front. But truly, in the behind closed doors, the Communist Party of China has a lot of little factions that are always trying to undermine each other. And I think that in many ways, Russia is almost like a junior in this partnership between China and Russia.
It is now. Everything that just came out of your mouth, I agree with 10,000%. I mean, I don't know why you're not more pro-Ukraine with that kind of worldview, man.
I think that's because I'm just so disgusted with how our country has been run that I want a clean house here, and that's what the
agree, man. I agree, but I don't disagree with you on our judgment of internal American political processes.
If we're talking about these countries that are neighboring these belligerent powers, I mean, we could do a whole nother discussion on the eventuality of the looming Taiwan crisis. How is our position towards Ukraine going to be indicative of how we might approach Taiwan? Now, I think that the Chinese are doing a much sort of absorbing Taiwan through just the de facto relationship that they have, and Taiwan is protected by a sea, which is much more difficult to uh, to wage a war over. But there are a lot of parallels that people have drawn between these the relationship
100%.
between these two countries. So I don't have a concise answer to how the Russian Chinese relationship's going to play out, but I think that overall, if anybody, if what the takeaway is from my explanation is that Russia and China are not necessarily natural allies, but they will be so long as there is a U.S. hegemony. But in this case, Russia is the junior partner because they just don't have the technological capacity and industrial capacity that China has.
Or the economy, or the I mean, or just the industrial base, or just or the sheer number of people. I mean, everything you just said now is correct. I just wish that you took your thinking all the way to its logical conclusion, man.
Yeah.
Well,
The
maybe we'll get there.
only other thing to add here is that I can definitely understand, especially given all that we talked about right now, how much problems the United States has to deal with, and this is exactly why I don't want the problems that we're experiencing overseas right now to get way too out of control for it to be even that much more difficult to deal with them later on. So it's kind of, trying to tackle this right now. The last thing I would say as far as Russia-China goes, why it is a, to quote Vishbura, fool's errand. He wants us to convince the abandoned camp that it's a fool's errand for Russia to be dislodged from China. And it's because China controls pretty much all of Bolshoi, Ussuriitsky Island within Siberia, and it gives them carte blanche pretty much like half of Siberia whenever they want to. Like if there is going to be some future military engagement between like Russia versus China, China ends up owning half of Siberia now. So that's an impossibility for them to ever be able to physically dislodge themselves from Chinese influence because they've been checkmated by China. And the last thing that I'd say once again is I really want there to be more pro-Ukrainian voices out there who can understand America's situation and what America's dealing with right now. Because frankly speaking, I think there's been a real big effort during Biden's administration to court a lot of people who actually don't see the civilizational problems
100%.
and,
who may put like the Ukrainian flag on their car or, out their
100%.
window.
Just I mean,
next to the BLM
Curtis
flag.
Yarvin, my friend Curtis Yarvin made a very clever joke. He said, "Can't we just put the Ukrainian flag directly into the rainbow flag on people's Twitter bios?" And I mean, like, it's funny, but it's not the way it should be. Like, we really should be talking to people like you in the language of Western civilization, in the language of common values, in the language of commonality and tradition. And I mean, like, Ukrainians are based. Like, the only people in the world who know how to fight other than Americans right now are Russians and Ukrainians, right?
Israelis.
Yeah, and Israelis, right? That's exactly right. Israelis, like the Ukrainian armed forces is possibly in some ways, in some capacities, the second armed forces of the world right now. They're certainly the second army of Europe. Ukraine is a absolutely based militarized country where they know how to fight, and and it's extraordinarily attractive. And in 2022, the entire post heroic age world stood up and watched as Ukrainians were fighting back, and then seen anything like this since 1945, right? Western Europeans and Canadians and Americans from the half of America that doesn't fight stood up. And I've been to war now. I think
This guy puts himself in harm's way. I'm very worried about him.
I think I've acquitted myself well. Other people think I've acquitted myself well. There are tougher guys than me out there, but this isn't about me. The Americans have two allies who are based and fight and are strong and have martial virtues. Those allies are Israel and Ukraine, and in terms of treaty allies, that the Brits know how to fight to a certain point, right? And
The French, but the Brits, they have their own problems right now with.
They have an army of 73,000. Ukraine is an army of 1.1 million, man.
Well, it's been a very instructive
I hope this gave you
conversation.
something to think about, man.
Indeed. It's been an instructive conversation. I appreciate you guys having me on. And now I have to excuse myself to go to a Charlie Kirk vigil that I'm helping to organize. and
Where is it?
that's taking place in Madison Square Park in New York City tonight.
What
It,
time?
it's a 7 o'clock.
Okay.
It's,
I mean,
We can't make it
We
because
can't-
we don't tell where we are. But anyway,
We're
in
far away.
secret base. We're in
We're
secret
far
base,
away.
far away. Yes, but anybody, I don't know, like, are there tickets available? Can people go there?
Yeah,
Can
can
people
people
go
show
in the
up.
city?
just show up. We're
Okay,
meeting
just
by
show
the fountain. If anybody's in New York City and they sympathize with the cause and recognize the tragedy of Charlie Kirk's assassination, the New York Young Republican Club, this is our official sponsored
great.
vigil where we can mourn and remember Charlie Kirk.
There we go. Yes.
Thank you, man.
Thank you so
I
much.
look forward to meeting you in real life. I'd love to have a drink.
Yeah, let's definitely
Yes,
do that soon.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
You're a gent. You're a gent. Thank you so much.
All right, Ian, thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure. And guys, please make sure to like, subscribe, and smash that bell and smash that subscribe
Yep.
button. And lastly, patreon.com/breaktherules. Become a patron today, and you are going to get a lot of great things, including, if you're a $20 patron, the ability to be physically in the room in the New York City studio with us, doing these shows and doing the Q&A with us and all that good stuff. So go there right now. I am putting the link into the chat. And Ian, where could people find
Yep.
you?
Yeah, just to plug myself, I'm on Twitter. It's Ian Chase McMath. You can type that, or I think it's at Ian McMath 92. Instagram, and that's I'm really on X. I rarely use Instagram or other social networks.
I'll find
Definitely
you on
don't
there,
use
man.
LinkedIn.
Here is the link, and it's also in the description as well for anybody who wants to check it out. So there we go. Ian, it was a great pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And let's definitely hang out again soon.
God bless. Take care.
God bless. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And stream.
Good.
There we
Yeah,
go.
that was great.
Oh, okay.
It's good. Нормально.